In this image, I want to select not only the window frame, but also the little arch above it so that I can darken it down so that it appears to be receding into the wall. Now to do this, I'm going to use a combination of both the rectangular and the elliptical marquee tool. I'll start with the elliptical marquee tool. And I'm going to imagine that there's a straight horizontal line going across the top of this arch, and where it meets a straight vertical line going up from the left side of the window is where I want to start dragging my elliptical marquee tool so that it comes down and it matches the arch. Now, if you didn't get it aligned perfectly, at first, don't worry, you can hold down the space bar in order to reposition it, in order to align it a little bit better. And then just release the space bar, and with the mouse still hold down, you can go ahead and resize it a bit more. Now, if that's still not right, we can go to the Select menu and choose to transform the selection. And we could scale it by clicking on any of the anchor points. We could also position our cursor outside of it and transform the selection. We can undo that by using Command Z or Control Z on Windows, but we can also access the different options like skew and distort and perspective. So I'm going to choose distort here and then click on one of the corner points in order to distort it, because this isn't exactly a perfect arch here along the top. Okay, once we've got that the way we like it, we'll apply the transformation, but it's only transform the marching ants. Now let's add the rest of the window to this. I'll switch to the rectangular marquee tool, and you can see that it's automatically switched to the Add to marquee. But I actually prefer just keeping these to the basic selection tools and then using the keyboard shortcuts. So in this case, I would just add the Shift key. That gives me the plus icon next to the icon in the screen, and that will allow me to add to this selection. Now I've added the whole window area, and I need to subtract the window. I could subtract each one of these panes individually, but again, it's going to be easier for me just to hold down the Option key. That gives me the subtract from, or the Alt key on Windows, subtract all the window panes at once, and then switch to the Shift key again in order to add back in these small areas of wood. So I'm just going to do this rather quickly, going across each one of them in order to select them. And if I needed to, I could go back in and refine these also, maybe with the polygonal lasso tool, like right here in this area. Sometimes it's hard for me to see what is selected and what's not, so I go into quick mask mode by tapping on the Q key or clicking on the quick mask icon, and that just gives me a mask that shows me in red the areas that are not selected, and it shows me without the red the areas that are selected. So sometimes that just helps me to double check what I have selected. I'll tap the Q key again in order to hide that. Now from the bottom of the Layers panel, I'll use my adjustment layer icon again to select the brightness and contrast, then use the Properties panel in order to decrease the brightness and increase the contrast in that area. This does give me a hard edge mask, so if I option click on the mask in the Layers panel, we can see indeed it is hard edged. So in order to make it a little bit softer edge so we can't see the areas that have been changed versus those that have not, I'll switch to the mask option in the Properties panel and just increase the feather a little bit to remove any of those telltale lines that show where I have selected. I can see here that I've selected a little bit too much, so I could also just go in with my lasso tool or select the polygonal lasso tool and just click to select maybe this small area right here. And if I need to touch up the mask, we can see if I option click on it or alt click on Windows that the area that I don't want to see is black. So I'll just choose Edit and then Fill, and I'll fill the contents of that area with black. I'll toggle the visibility on and off, so that was before and that's after. So you can see that it helps to look at the area that you want to select and then break it down into its basic shapes. That way, you can use a combination of the selection tools, like the elliptical and the rectangular marquee tools, to make what initially looks like it might be a complex selection, but it's really just made up of a few simple shapes.